Welcome to the turn feature overview for FeatureCAM. We're going to go in and look at making this part. I'm not going to use this model. This is a sectioned view of it that I have created. I'm going to actually import a model and we'll do the threads and all these features that we see here from a solid. You can also do this from dimensions, obviously, or from drawing, which we'll see when we get to that point. I'll talk about how we can also do things without having a model. All right, so I'm going to go through and align this part. Basically, I want to deal with the z-axis. I'm not going to get too much into this, but I'm going to use this cylinder to align it. Check my z-axis, make sure it's correct. I'm going to go ahead and skip the x because it doesn't matter. We'll be spinning the part. I'm going to make round stock, use round stock for this. I'm going to make sure my stock is concentric to my model. And then I can see that this is my imported data. This is my model itself, so it tells me the length and the OD I need. I'm going to go ahead and use these values, and we'll take 20 thou off the front. So there will be 20 thou excess on the front of the model, and we'll face that off. Okay, now I need to do a setup. So one of the things about turn mill environment is if you use the view cube, sometimes when you go to the top view, it rotates the part. So I use the right click menu and go to the top. I want to place this out on the end of the part, and I want to then use this blue pickable Z and bring it down only in Z axis down to the end of my model. So nothing changed here, only the Z axis, and then we'll face that off. As soon as I hit finish here, FeatureCAM is going to go automatically into what's known as AFR for the turning, right? So just like in the previous video where I went over AFR, this is kind of the same thing, but for turning. So this is going to be features like, facing with a single point tool, turns, bores, grooves, things like that. Okay, so I'm going to press next. If I had a turn mill part and I had a bunch of holes around the model, I would go ahead and use this to recognize them. I don't need to do that here. This is just a lathe part. So I'm going to go right past that. And now I'm going to select the features after FeatureCAM looks at the model and analyzes it and comes up with the feature types. So as you can see right here, I've got bore feature. If I look on the inside, you can see the red, that's going through. I've got a face feature, a groove feature that's out on the OD, and then there's a groove on the inside that once I highlight that, we'll have a hard time seeing it there, but you can see it directly below center line there and also up above. It's just showing both sides. And then the turn feature. Okay, one thing I want you to notice, again, there we go with the view cube, is that where there are grooves or what areas where when we're doing our turning, because this is the turn feature I'm highlighting, that it wants to go down into things. If these two diameters matched, it would have the feature shape like this, because it made a curve doing this. So each one of these is getting a curve, okay, except for the face. It doesn't need a curve, right? So I'm going to accept those and hit finish and see what we got. Over here in setup 1, we have the face feature, bore feature, turn, and 2 grooves. One's on the outside, one's on the inside. So if I hover over, you'll watch right in this area, you'll see the green through the part. Okay, so I could also unshade this if I want. So all the pink are the features. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hide all those features just because that's something I do. Go ahead and leave this shaded up. And I want to get ready for simulation. So I want to be able to simulate this and have it kind of section out a part of this while it's simulating for the internal work so that I can see that. So I'm going to go into simulation, and I'm also going to turn my tool colors back on. So if you're not sure what that is, I refer you to the previous video and see what that is. But I'm going to go ahead and turn tool colors on, and for the round stock, I want it to section it out, take a quarter of it out, leave me with 3/4 of it, and we'll see what we get. So if I run a center line and press play, we see the center line of the tool, green or rapid. Since I have tool colors on, we've got the toolpaths in the same color as the tool, which is kind of hard to see in this area, right? So we got some blue on that tool, yellows. And then if we have problems, just like in milling, we're going to get warnings. So I'm going to say yes to that, and see it says tool is wider than the slot. Okay, so if you remember, I have a rule in default not to pick anything smaller than 1/8 of an inch, right? That's on the milling. That's kind of carrying over in here is what's going on. But this is groove 5, and groove 5 happens to be that internal groove, or that ID groove. Okay, so I don't know what that is, but it doesn't matter. I'm just going to pick a smaller tool. So if I go right to the tool in the results window and double click there, it takes me right to where I need to make the change instead of going in the feature and going the long way. You'll notice that I don't really have a ton to choose from as far as narrower, that I do have a lot to choose from. That was my tongue twister there. So I can pick one of these. I'll just go ahead and go with this 93.8. Something narrow, and you'll see that I no longer have a problem. There was a red exclamation here a second ago. Let me just show you that. If I undo the tool override and hit apply, and I go try to run it, we'll get the red exclamation point. Let me go ahead and do that. There's our error, and here's the red exclamation point. So let me eject the simulation, go quickly back in there. You see how easy it is. I'll make my change. The finish pass will update to using the same tool, and we're good to go. All right, now center line, once I get through it, super fast or slow it down, we'll see that we have NC code based on whichever post processor we have active. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just show you that briefly, and you'll notice I do have a feature on the back side. It's a groove for the back of this part I created before the video just so you could see it. But we'll do some of this other work on the other end. But I got my grooves and all that, and I have NC code based on whatever post processor I have. As a reminder, watch the other video if you want to see what posts come with FeatureCAM. I did show mill and turn. I'm not going to do that now in the interest of time, but now we've got the bulk of this done. Okay, so we'll rotate that, or remember, go to the top view here in the right-click menu. Okay, what I need to do now is run a 3D sim and see if we have any problems, because that will collision check. And you can see right away I got a collision, and things were happening so fast we're like, we don't even know what's going on. Anytime you see pink, that is also indication of a collision. So let me eject this, and basically what's happening is my boring bar doesn't have an operation before the boring bar to drill this out, because I don't have a hole feature. Now, you do not actually want to do a separate hole feature here. You want to actually go into the bore feature and add a pre-drill operation. Okay, so here's the gouge checking pop-up that comes up and shows you we got a problem, right? So in the bore feature, I need to know basically a little bit of information. I need to know how deep I need to drill. I also need to know what size that I can fit for a drill in there. And then I'll add that in a pre-drill operation. So I'm going to show you one of the tools we have in dimensioning called curvature, where you click on that, and as you move on the model, you can see a green circle. If you look down here at the bottom, under where axis 2 is, when I have my mouse in there, you'll see that I have a 496.9. So that's a radius. So we're just under an inch with this. Okay, so I'll do like a 7/8 drill in here. That'll also let FeatureCAM know if I do it in the bore feature that that's been drilled, and it will adjust the boring tool path accordingly. All right, so I don't know the depth yet. That's okay. Let's get the boring turned on in the pre-drill in the bore feature strategy. And I'm going to say, let's do a 7/8 end mill, or drill, I should say. So whatever tool with a diameter of 7/8. All right, now I don't know the depth. What I'll do is I'll use the model to help me out. So just like before when I showed you can use some of these blue pickable things, when I move the Z-axis for the setup, I can do the same thing to figure out roughly what I need for a depth to be able to drill through. Okay, so I see I've got this 2.853. I'll just go ahead and take it a little deeper and go like 2.9. So I better have a drill that's got about 3 inches of flute length, right? So typically that's not too hard on a 7/8. Now we've got the rough pass and the finish pass. Now, in my simulation, I have that 3/4 view, just as a reminder. In the simulation and round stock, I've got 3/4 view with lathe ID work on. So now we're going to run this, and as soon as we hit the internal work and we don't have a crash, and you see it's sectioned out, there's our drilling, so on and so forth. So if we look at some of the settings that we have, it looks like I have a gouge here. That's the feature I had left in here before starting the video that's doing that groove. Well, I have to finish turning this. Okay, so a couple things have happened. I probably better just deactivate that for now. So anyway, I'll press play here and go simulate this. You see the tools trying to dive here, trying to dive there. Once we get to the internal work, we can see our drilling, and then you'll watch this boring bar try to dive in there. Those are undercuts, and we need to deal with those. Okay, now you can see my drill did go through a little bit, so I took it deep enough to break through the part. You don't have to have 3 foot of stock length here if you're putting in a 3-inch bar. We're going to cut this off anyway, but effectively, if I go deep enough, I can kind of spot drill for the next part because I didn't put a spot drill operation in my feature for the bore. I actually can do that by going to the pre-drill operation and activating spot drill if I want. So I hit apply, I get them. I don't need that for what we're doing. We're just clearing out for a boring bar. Okay, but in the bore feature, under the rough pass, we need to look at depth of cut just to show you one of the settings. So in the previous video, I went over machining attributes and configuration, so I'm not going to do that necessarily here, but go refer to that video. That's what that video was intended for, along with some milling. So depending on what your material is, you want a different depth of cut, right? So I'm going to set that to 100, and I'll do that on the turn as well. Now I could go adjust that and make it do it, through the attributes, but again, not trying to include that in this video. All right, so let's take a look at the turn feature first. So we want to address where it's doing the undercut. So it's trying to reach back here. That's why it does that little cut down here, trying to go in here, and then the internal groove is doing that as well. So those are called undercuts. So what I'm going to do is adjust my machining boundary. So you do that by going to the rough pass and turning tab, or if you're in the bore feature, this will be a boring tab. And right now we see the machining boundary, and it includes everything. So I actually have a curve that matches the profile of this part. So that feature is using curve 8, for example, right? So that's the shape. Well, that is part of my boundary. So this, the groove back here, all this down here, this little dip down in here and across. I want to keep it out of these areas. All I have to do that is to remove all undercuts. And you'll see that it just fills those in nicely, and that's our new machining boundary. You can also set boundaries on the face, so maybe this is done and you actually want to turn from here down. You could do that, pick where you want it, or type in the value. Same thing with the spindle side. So face of the part, spindle side of the part, right? So you can set your boundaries there. When you do that, remember to do it for the finish pass as well, because they have independent control in case you want to do something different between each operation, right? So I want to remove them in both. I'll do the same thing in the bore feature. You can actually make that setting a default. I don't generally do that, but that's up to you. Again, those are configurations and attributes. Refer to the other video. All right, so we also have a thread to do on here, right? So we got most of this. We got the undercuts. Let's go ahead and simulate this one more time. No more diving down in there. And once we get to the internal stuff, we'll see the boring toolpath. It didn't go in there. Now we can do the grooves, right? So we're cruising, but we did have some threads out here. And I showed you that section viewed model. I'm going to do these from dimensions because it's just the easiest way to do threads in FeatureCAM. So I'm going to go thread from dimensions. So these are features that can be created from dimensions. The turn and the bore and the other grooves that we have required curves. So AFR portion, when we did the import, it created curves for us. Okay. So I can do a thread without a curve, or I can use a curve to drive a thread over it. What I want to do is tell it whether it's ID, OD, or something, and then I can either do my own custom and set my own pitch and thread height and all that if I know those, or I can use the standard thread list that comes with FeatureCAM and choose from one of these categories. On this one, I'll go ahead and just make it metric for the heck of it. And I know that I'm going to want around 50 millimeters just because I prepped this part, right? So I'm going to do 50 by 1.5. Once I hit preview, you'll see that I get a preview. There's the length of my threads. Typically, it'll default to 1 like that. I might want like 0.8. Okay, what you see back here is a relief groove. So when you're threading, it doesn't drag. But I've already got this groove here, so I don't need that. But it's there to help you if you need it, right? So then the pitch and all that automatically grays out because we're using a standard thread. All we got to do is give it these 2 values, right? If you wanted, you could change the location. I'm going to leave this at Z0. We've got the right length. We just need to get rid of this. That's found on the next page. That's called a relief groove. You can see this. This will actually take the bottom of this groove just a little bit deeper. I think it's 5 thou by default than the bottom of the thread so that there's clearance. Okay, but you can adjust this depth right here, whatever you want. So if I go, 200 and click in the next box and come back, you see I got a wider one, but I don't even want it at all. Okay, now if you hadn't done the turning already, you could rough and finish to that major diameter. You could even then add a chamfer on here. Let's do like 50. I have to hit, there's not a preview button for some reason on here, but if we look at this thread, there's a little chamfer there ahead of it. And then if I turn that off, hit next and come back, you see that that's gone. So you have to have at least one of these operations on to get that. Otherwise, you can just turn the chamfer, right? All right, so I'm going to go with this. Now, the threading you have either fixed or calculated and have it calculate based on these parameters here. Or you can do a fixed amount and say, hey, give me 10 passes and then 1 spring pass or whatever you want to do, and then deal with the chamfer at the end if you want. Anyway, I'm going to go with this, hit next. It's picking tools. It's going to thread it. Now, I had left the rough and finish on. I don't need those, so I'll just turn them off in the strategy. We have just the threading. Okay, so let's go with that. Let's watch the simulation on this now. So the 3/4 view on indexing I might be done with because I'm good with my boring operation. So I'm going to probably turn this off so I can see the full thing. We'll just let this go one more time. Here comes the threading in just a second. Okay, going really fast, hard to see, right? So I'm going to put a little breakpoint in my simulation so that I can pause at that spot. I showed that in the other video. Again, refer to that. It's super helpful. I'm going to go to the round stock and 3/4 view. Luckily, if the top view is close on the view cube, you do that, it usually doesn't spin it, but it's not a guarantee, right? So I'll go a little bit faster through this and then I'll slow it down when we get to the threads. My simulation paused. Slow that down. Still going pretty fast, so let me just kind of single step. Okay, so now I got some, looks like it's rotating around or whatever. That's a setting in the simulation as well. But you see the threading at the end, we got the end result. And I can clear my breakpoint out at any time when I'm not in a simulation. So highlight it and take the hand with the X and remove it. And we'll see the completed part. There's our thread with all the passes and all that. Okay, I'll do one more feature from dimensions just so you get a feel for it. So if you worked with the print and you drew all this stuff, the profile, you only need the top half. Then you would draw it and make a curve or whatever for something. This is kind of a regular groove because we have 2 different cylinders here, but I'll just pretend this is the same and just kind of show you how you might make one without even drawing it. So I'm going to go to a groove from dimensions. That means just type. It's going to be on the OD x-axis, so the outside of the part. I'm going to hit preview. I'm going to see a preview. Now it's just remembering whatever I did last time, or if I just open FeatureCAM, it automatically puts in some numbers. I need to get the diameter correct, so I'll just use this one for example. I obviously have 2 different ones, but you see how I picked on the model. Then I can put the depth. These aren't pickable, so I'd kind of need to know what they are, set my width accordingly, like so. And then I need to deal with location. But you see, these right now have a radius. That's because the previous one I did before recording this, I did that. So you can do a chamfer or a radius or any combination of those two on each side. So you could do a chamfer on one, a radius on the other. You could do a larger one and a smaller one. Hit preview, so you got a big chamfer, small radius. If you zero those, there will be nothing there, just straight walls, right? And then you can even do angled walls. Let's do like 5 degrees, 20 degrees, whatever you need to do. I'm not going to get into every setting. That's basically what it is, the radius at the bottom on either side. Okay, but we're doing it from dimensions. Now I just got to get it in the right location. Generally, you'll pick the back edge where you want that to go. Now you see my width is wrong, but I'm not keeping this anyway. I'm just showing you how you create features from dimensions, because this is a turnover view after all. All right, now I would make a new setup to flip this around, but before I do that, I need to do a cutoff. So I'm going to do a cutoff right here, hit next. I'm going to give it a value. I have a tool in here that's 122 wide. I'm going to go ahead and pick that. That will force it to pick that tool when I type that number. So it looks for a tool with whatever width. It's looking at the OD of the stock for the diameter. So if I had turned all this all the way down and I wanted to use that, I could pick here and change it. I'm just going to leave it here. You can also put a chamfer or radius on this wall if you needed to. So if we didn't have this little step and I wanted to do the cutoff and the radius, I could get my diameter right, put my radius value, and then okay, so what I'm going to do is ignore the subspindle transfer, and we're going to just do the cutoff. So there's my tool and all that. Now I just got to get the location right, which I didn't do when I was creating it. So the location right here, I can tell it where I want it, or I could have picked on the model if I did that, 2.75, or wherever I want it here. Okay, so if I want it exactly on the end, I can do that, or if I want a little gap, that's fine. And then do I want a parts catcher or not? Right, so I turn on my part catcher, hit apply, and okay. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to make a new setup. I already have one, but I'll show you how I did that, and then I'll just cancel. But I would go to setup, and I'm going to do a new setup, and I'm going to toggle whether it's main spindle or sub spindle. This is important for two things. Whether I want to put this in the main or the sub, that's going to affect how the part's oriented in the graphics window as well. So I want to put this back in the main, right? So I choose to put it on the other end of the part, but I need to move it down wherever I want it in Z. And what I want to do is put it on the end of the actual model. So I'll just snap to that, and there's my 0, and I would have a new setup. Now I've already done that just because I wanted to have that other feature here. Now, you know, when I update the view, it changes the part just like it's looking in the machine. So this groove feature was made from dimensions, only it's on the face of the part and an ID or OD, right? Whatever it is. Hit apply, got the groove feature. Okay, then I could do the turning and all that, but I'm not going to finish this part. I'll just do one more. So I'll activate setup 2, and when I go to the top view, you see it flips the part around just like it would be in the machine. I'll just quickly face off the part, and then we will be done with it. Okay, so that's an overview of the turning. So once again, we'll have further videos for the turn mill and all that stuff later. But for now, this is what I wanted to cover for turning. Let us know how we can help you out and get you using FeatureCAM. There's my gouge right there. And that's because I need to make sure my facing is running before the groove. But actually, that's not it. I haven't finished this turn, right? So I would need to turn this out before I do the groove. Anyway, that's a look at the turning. And thanks for joining me.